Welcome to the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives, hosted by County Manager Scott Johnson. This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in county government and across our community. We'll talk about the services, projects, and decisions that make Columbia County a great place to live. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening to the County Compass. Now, here's Scott Johnson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the County Compass. I really appreciate everybody continuing to watch and listen to our podcast. We've gotten really good feedback, and we're going to try to implement that feedback as we continue to progress in the podcast and give you good information about what's going on in Columbia County. And we are committed to try to improve the best that we can. This week, we're going to discuss what may be a little bit of a controversial topic. We're going to talk about growth in Columbia County. Columbia County, if you go back in history, was really a farming community. It's taken on different shapes and different forms over the years. But really, if you really go back and look in history, it was a rural agriculture, farming type community. And it stayed that way for a long time. But then you started seeing the implementation of suburbs in our country, not just in Columbia County, but in our country. And people started moving out to the suburbs, and people started building subdivisions out in the areas that were typically farmland. And what we witnessed in Columbia County, what we experienced was really a westward expansion of Richmond County. A lot of people that were living in the downtown area decided that they wanted to move out into the suburbs. And we saw a lot of that in the 70s and 80s. So I want to give you some census numbers to really tell you how Columbia County has grown. So this is very interesting fact here. Columbia County has grown double digits, so more than 10%, double digits in every census since 1950. With 1970 and 80, that census period, having 80% growth. So we almost doubled between 1970 and 1980. And then we saw, again, double-digit growth again. And then most recently in 2000 to 2010, we saw a 40% growth. And even since the last census, since 2020, these are estimated numbers, but we've already grown 7% in the last couple of years since the 2020 census. So no doubt that we're going to hit that 10% mark again as people continue to choose Columbia County as their place to live. So it's not new. And I know a lot of people would really love to replace those beautiful entry signs that we just put at the county lines, and we have some plan for the interstate. These welcome to Columbia County signs, and really trying to show people that they're entering a different community. A lot of people like to replace those with no vacancy signs, but we can't really do that. People are going to continue to choose this place to call home, and as part of that, part of that progress means that we're going to be adding people. And we know that, really, if you go back and look, we're talking about since 1950, we had this double growth. Progress is really part of our DNA in Columbia County. Growth is part of our DNA in Columbia County. So it's really hard to just say, stop, no more. We don't want anybody else. We're going to close the gates. Nobody else is coming here. But the opposition from those already here is also in our DNA. I think when people find something good and they're really enjoying that, they really don't want anybody else to come take that away from them. And I completely understand that. But fact is, people want to live here. People choose to live in Columbia County. The Board of Commissioners usually gets blamed for this. I've heard it a lot. That we're very easy on builders and very easy on developers, and really, that's a common theme that I've heard, but I haven't heard it a lot from builders and developers. If you ask them, they'll say, oh no, Columbia County has some strict regulations and strict ordinances, and it's very difficult to deal with them. I even had somebody recently sent me a text and said, I'm so frustrated, I'm never going to do another project in Columbia County again. And this person's a friend, and I had to remind this person, these are the regulations. These are what we have to do. We have to make sure that we are staying on top of growth and making sure that we do things the responsible way. I don't think we're as easy on builders and developers as people think. And for people to think that we approve every subdivision or every project that comes down the pipe, I don't think that's fair for the Board of Commissioners or our Planning Commission, because fact is they don't. Just in our most recent planning commission meeting, there were a couple of denials that I'm sure upset the developers. But the planning commission listened to the will of the people that were there. And before you go off saying, well, you didn't listen to our will with data centers, there's more to come about that. We have to understand that every project is unique. Every project is different and has to be taken on its own merit. But our Board of Commissioners and our planning commissioners do a really good job of making sure that we have smart growth and responsible growth. So we're going to talk about some of the recent announcements in a few minutes and in future podcasts. But first, let's go back in time. Let's talk about people that lived here before any of us lived here. I found this great story, and I'm a little bit of a historian myself. I like to go back and read history. I like to research and those types of things, especially when it comes to Columbia County. But today I'm going to tell you a little story about a man named Jabez Stevens. Jabez Stevens was a farmer in Columbia County. I believe he might have got one of the original land grants, or his family got one of the original land grants in Columbia County. And he was specifically a peach farmer. He owned 300 acres near what we know now as Appling, downtown Appling. And it was very fertile farmland. It produced great crops. And he was known for these great peaches that he grew and sold at market. So this was, again, late 1800s-ish. But the one specific story that I'm going to talk about, kind of going back in the archives and looking, was in the late 1800s. In 1880, he became a leader in a group called the Appling Anti-Rail League after learning that progress was heading his way in the form of a railroad. The railroad was expanding. It was expanding really all over the country in the 1800s as a way to be able to get people and transit and people to places and transit crops to market and those types of things. So the railroad was really the way. It was the new thing that was coming through. So Jabez didn't want the railroad to come through his property, and actually he didn't just want it not to come through his property. He didn't want it. Period. He didn't want it in Appling, and he didn't want it in Columbia County. He thought there was no need for that. So he started by complaining to his elected officials, and I can just imagine him coming to a commission meeting and standing at the podium. And I know that I'm, kind of making that up, but I can just imagine Jabez Stevens, coming to the commission meeting or calling his commissioner. Well, I guess he couldn't call his commissioner, going to see his commissioner and saying, hey, I don't want this railroad thing. You guys need to stop it. But fact is, it was coming. And one way or the other, it was probably going to be coming to Columbia County. So after he talked to his elected officials and didn't get any satisfaction, he took to what was then social media. He didn't have social media then, but he started writing letters and these fiery manifestos to the Augusta Chronicle. And he said things like, and I was able to go back and find some of this in the archives, "Let the steel rails come and our orchards rot from noise and soot." Let me think about that for a second. So the railroad coming through is going to cause all this noise, and it's going to have all these environmental impacts, and it's going to kill off everything and kill off everybody's way of life. But that's what he thought, and it was his land, and he's free to think that. But that was his comment. Really makes me think that not a whole lot has changed over the years when people have an opinion about a certain thing and they're trying to make a point about their position. They may go out and research and find things or believe things are going to happen. And we've seen that a lot recently on development projects. But he said that. And he also said, our soil feeds us, not some iron beast. So he might have been a little bit short-sighted when it came to that, but you know what? It was his land. He worked hard for it. It was the best peaches around. He was very proud of that, and he wanted to preserve the land for generations. He was somebody that got an original land grant. And he wanted his family to live on that land forever and ever and ever. So when the meeting elected officials didn't work and the writing the Augusta Chronicle didn't really seem to work, a railroad was still coming, he recruited 10 of his neighbors, and they dubbed themselves the Peach Pit Brigade. So we had a Peach Pit Brigade in Columbia County, Georgia in the late 1800s, and they patrolled at night with shotguns and lanterns and dogs, and they did everything they could do to try to disrupt the railroad. Railroad even ended up hiring Pinkerton guards to come out to guard the surveyors that were working on the property or working on the route of the railroad. but to no avail. The Peach Pit Brigade was very strong, organized, but a small group, 10, 12 folks that were working to stop the railroad from coming through Columbia County, Georgia, or coming through Appling, Georgia at that time. There were a few reports of some burned cross ties, so they would kind of go out and destroy what the builders were doing. But really, in his area, it was really more about protecting his farm. They would go out to other places, and there was a report of a shotgun blast to a caboose, but I don't think anybody was ever harmed. The interesting thing was these old farmers really just pestered the builders and the surveyors, and they did it by throwing peach pits at them. So think about a peach and the pit that's on the inside. They would pick those things up off the ground and they would hide in the bushes. And as the surveyors would come out and the workers would come out, or the Pinkerton guards would come out, they'd jump up and they'd throw the peach pits at them until they would get off the property. So that was their way of stopping progress and running them off. Well, it worked. Jabez won. The railroad did not come through Appling, Georgia. They had enough. They decided, you know what, it's not worth this. We're not going to do this anymore. And so they decided that they would reroute the railroad 10 miles south. And now we know that same rail line or similar rail line runs through to the cities of Grovetown and Harlem. We talked in our last episode about incorporation and what cities are in Columbia County. And we know that Harlem and Grovetown are our only cities. And some people may ask, why Harlem and Grovetown? Why are those cities? Why is Martinez not a city? Why is Appling not a city, even though it's our county seat? Why is Evans not a city? Well, the reason is back in the 1800s when the railroads came through, they had these rail stops and these rail hubs, and both Harlem and Grovetown had a depot. And when the railroad would stop, it allowed the people and the commerce to grow around the railroad. So around this same time that Jabez was farming out in Appling, Georgia, the railroad was coming through Grovetown and Harlem, Georgia, and they were flourishing. I mean, think about this. Harlem and Grovetown were the economic hub of Columbia County. Today, I would say if you look at it financially, maybe Martinez Evans has more commerce than Grovetown and Harlem, although Grovetown and Harlem do a great job of providing stores and commerce and great feel for their downtowns, and both of them run great governments. But at this time, back in the 1800s, that was it. When you thought Columbia County, you thought Harlem, Georgia. You thought Grovetown, Georgia. And they were the economic driver of our community in that time. Railroad went away. Jabez was happy temporarily. Fast forward a couple of years. So after the reroute, blight hit, and his peaches were starting to rot before he could get them to market because he would refuse to use the railroad. So while other people were using the railroad and other people were taking their crops and doing it that way, and the rail was actually going to, there was actually a war going, I say a war, it wasn't a war, there's competition going on between Savannah and Charleston, where they could get the crops to either one of these ports, and then they could be shipped anywhere. They could be shipped to New York. They could be, anywhere you wanted to ship these products, you could do that. But it was all a result of the railroad, and Jabez just was not going to have that, and so he ended up losing everything he had. Based on the information that I found, it may not be 100% accurate, but I think it's pretty close. It looks like he lost the farm in 1891 and reportedly died broke in 1905. Both he and his wife are said to be buried at the Old Cahokia Cemetery, Old Cahokia Church Cemetery in Appling. I haven't personally confirmed this, but I plan to do that at some point. I'm going to actually go up and maybe take a look at that with permission of the church if I can do that, but would love to do that. And what happened to that peach farm? What happened to the peach farm that he fought so hard for, that he laid everything on the line for to protect and preserve for his family for generations? It's currently owned by Columbia County. I found the exact piece of property. It's actually currently owned by Columbia County, and it's the site of a sewer treatment plant. Now, that's the ultimate example of irony. And I don't really, I take no glory in that. I don't think that's great, but it's just the fact that this man believed so righteously and fought so hard for his land that today, not only is it not in his family and I'm not really sure if any of his descendants are still here or not. What I found was most of them moved away. They don't even call Columbia County home anymore. But it's actually now a sewage treatment plant, and it's there for progress, and it takes care of subdivisions and growth and those types of things. So a little bit of irony there. So let's fast forward 120 years. Let's get back to where we are today. Citizens and elected officials alike, they find themselves fighting for the county they love. We don't try to stifle public input. We don't ask people not to come to meetings. As a matter of fact, we post things and we encourage participation and we encourage people to come out. But a lot of times what we find, or what I find, I'm not going to say what we find. This is my podcast, so a lot of this is my opinion, and I'm just going to throw it out there that way. But a lot of times what I find is we hear a lot from a vocal minority in Columbia County. Typically, if people are happy, they're not going to say anything. They're not going to come to a meeting. But if somebody is against something, they may be on the minority side of that. And when I say that, I don't mean racially. I'm talking about minority on a project or on an issue or something like that. And they may come out, or politically, there may be some political issues there. And those are the people that we typically see that come out and they make a big fuss and they get on social media and they make a big fuss about what's happening in Columbia County. When generally speaking, most people, are happy about the things that are going on. So, it's okay. It's okay for our citizens to come out and be against things. It's okay for our elected officials to disagree with citizens and with each other. I mean, that's the way our government is set up, and that's what we expect. So I'll just say this: smart growth is important. I think you have to have smart growth, because without it, the county's going to die. We could put up those no vacancy signs. We could stop everything right now and just live off of what we have currently. Never raise another budget, never provide another service, never do anything. But, if we weren't financially as stable as we are, we would be one hurricane away from the county being bankrupt. Go back to Helene and how much that cost us, $85 million. Nobody went up on anybody's taxes. Nobody asked anybody to pay that. Now, fortunately, we've gotten a lot of that money back from FEMA through our partners at GEMA at the state. But we had to fund a lot of that. We had to self-fund that. So we put projects on hold because, contrary to popular belief, we don't have $85 million just laying around in a slush fund somewhere that I can just pull and say, hey, let's just pay this and we'll take. We don't do that. We don't have that. So we put projects on hold. We rearranged things. We slowed things down. But fact is, we've got a lot to do in Columbia County. We're going to have growth. We're going to have growth to be able to sustain the way of life that we have. Now, make no mistake that nobody I've ever talked to wants to cut down every single tree. Nobody wants to pave every inch of dirt in Columbia County. Well, there may have been a developer or two that said they wanted to cut down every tree and pave every inch of dirt, but that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. We recently passed our comprehensive plan, and I know that was a little bit of controversy surrounding that. And those of you that may have followed that or watched the commission meeting or the planning commission meeting, there were people that were upset about the comprehensive plan. Most of what we heard people being upset about the comprehensive plan was they didn't like the fact that the comprehensive plan included technology and industrial areas, which is where the data centers are going. So we saw that really as a continuation of the fight, pretty much from the same people that were opposed to data centers were also opposed to the comprehensive plan adoption because it still called for land for data centers. Now, let's talk a little bit about a comprehensive plan and what that is, okay? This helps guide our growth. It helps protect our resources. It gives the commissioners a document that has citizen input that will help with future zoning decisions. It's a roadmap. It's a guide. What it's not is it's not the Bible. It's not that, okay, citizens are going to come to some meetings and they're going to decide what they want in this area, what they don't want in this area. It's going to be put in a document. And then that document is then going to be implemented, and there is no change from that. That's just it can't operate that way. We have to be fluid. Things change, people change, elected officials change, priorities change. Things come along, opportunities come along, so we have to look at those opportunities. So it's a roadmap, it's a guide, and with the citizens' input, which we did get citizens' input. A lot of people, a few people said, hey, you didn't give enough citizen input on this whole comprehensive plan thing. You didn't allow for enough citizen input. Well, we were actually pretty glad with what we saw, because on this plan, we saw, I believe, 3 times the citizen input that we saw on the last plan. So triple the amount of people that were involved in the process. And I went back and looked at some of their comments, and some of their comments didn't really line up with what some of the things that the people that were against the plan were saying, what they wanted and what they didn't want. So again, kind of take the Jabez Stevens thing back into consideration. People are passionate about what they're passionate about, and they have the right to be. They're citizens in Columbia County. They deserve to be heard. But just because somebody wants something doesn't mean that we always get it. We have to look at the collective good of the community and the collective good of the county. So that's exactly what we do. And that's what the growth management plan is going to do. It's going to help us guide that process of rezonings in the future. It's not going to decide whether something gets built or doesn't get built. That's not the purpose of it, and it's just not going to happen that way. So will everybody be happy? Definitely not. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But the fact is, the railroad, so to speak, is coming to Columbia County, and we either have to plan accordingly, or we could potentially lose everything that we have in the county, or at least lose the way of life that we have now. Now, this leads me to data centers, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit and hinted around about it. And I will probably do an entire podcast on its own talking about data centers and how they came here. But I'm still waiting on information. I'm still waiting. We don't have a single building plan yet for a data center in Columbia County. We've gone through the zoning process, and we've looked at the ins and outs. We visited some in other communities and talked about that a lot. But we don't have any building plans yet. So it'd be a little premature for me to talk about that. But the day is going to come where I will do the podcast, and I will tell you all the ins and outs, what we knew, what we didn't know, all those things about data centers, okay? And I'll just tell you, I've heard everything from bribes and payoffs to insider favors to elected officials and staff just trying to ruin our county. And I'm going to sit here before you today and tell you that's all untrue. I don't have any indication that anybody took any bribes. I don't have any indication that anybody that has worked on this project is going to get rich personally on this or do this. I've been accused of using my consulting company to potentially benefit from this in some way, shape, or form. Let me just go ahead and go on the record now and just tell everybody, I think it's a good time to probably say this. There was a time when I had a consulting company. I did it on my own time. It was very popular because we were helping smaller governments, smaller cities and counties to be able to achieve goals. It wasn't just me. I had other people. It wasn't just people here in Columbia County. I had other people around the state that were working with me. And it grew into something pretty large. It grew into something so large that I found that I couldn't be your county manager and do this consulting company, so I stopped it. And if you'll go back and check the records and go back and look, you'll find that it was dissolved. The consulting company that really started because I was being attacked politically, and there were people trying to be elected just to fire me, and you can believe that or not, but that was true. I started that company to be able to to protect myself and have myself a way to be able to live and be able to flourish if I did get fired because of political things, and that happens to county managers all the time. I did that. But folks, it doesn't even exist anymore. So for anybody to say that I'm going to get some sort of under the table favor or bribe or money or anything like that through my consulting company on the backside, absolutely not true. It doesn't even exist. I don't even do that. I devote 100% of my time now to being your county manager and working here in Columbia County. So all untrue. So back to data. So sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Kind of tired of hearing about it, but I figured you may want to hear about it, and at least you've heard it from me, which is the whole reason for the podcast. You can kind of hear what's going on in Columbia County, the truth, again, unfiltered, maybe even uncomfortable, but that's what it is. All right, data centers. They're not popular everywhere, and I understand that. A lot of people don't want data centers, and a lot of times they base their arguments on information that they've gathered from the internet. So again, talking about ultimate irony, People are using data centers to fight the need for data centers. Your need for immediate information and your ability to be able to go to the internet and get the answer to your question immediately, or not the answer, let's go back, to get an answer to your question immediately, is something that we've all gotten used to. We all have phones, we all have computers, we can throw something in Google, we can ask Grok, we can ask ChatGPT, we can ask all these things, and we're all starting to use these things because we have a need for instant gratification. When you scroll on Facebook or you go to Instagram or you look at TikTok, where's all that data stored? It's stored in data centers. And as Americans, we're continuing to produce millions of terabytes of data every day, and fact is, it's got to go somewhere. So data centers are coming. Now, in Columbia County, the data centers that we're looking at are going on parcels that we're actually going to eventually, at some point, we're going to eventually probably be the location for hundreds, if not thousands, of houses. And with hundreds, if not thousands of houses comes tens of thousands of cars and tens of thousands of trips. Folks, it adds up. So as people are talking about what they do want, what they don't want in Columbia County, I will tell you as the county manager and talking to our commissioners, the two biggest complaints that we get from county residents are taxes and traffic. Those are the two big things, taxes and traffic. Our taxes are too high and there's too much traffic in Columbia County. You need to do something about it to slow the traffic down. Folks, that's what we've done with the whole data center issue. We've found a way to bring in an industry that is, I know it's a new industry and we don't know a lot about it, but based on our research and everything we found, we feel like it's the safest industry to bring to Columbia County that will produce tremendous amounts of revenue, so much so that we can eliminate property taxes, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And a lot of you just sighed or rolled your eyes or quit listening to the podcast when I said that. Here he goes again. Folks, we're working on that hard. I'll talk about that in just a second. But, fact of the matter is it's less cars. It's less houses. It's less people coming to Columbia County. Do we want another 80% growth in people moving here? I don't know. I would say probably not. But our commissioners, when they hear that we don't want, we need to lower our taxes and we need less traffic in Columbia County, and then we go through a process by which to do that would be beneficial for the county. To me, it sounds like it's a win-win situation. I know to a lot of you it may not sound like that, but that was the rationale behind it. We're working hard to do that. And while we're talking about that, let me talk just briefly, as this is timely, about the bills. Representative Richardson and the rest of our representatives in our state house, Representative Leverett, Representative Clifton, Representative Dr. Newton, and then our senators, Senator Burns and Senator Anderson, are all working really hard on trying to help us with this. So Representative Richardson actually dropped the legislation. I'm very proud to report that the Columbia County bill to allow us to set up this homestead tax relief grant passed two Ways and Means subcommittees last week and passed the full Ways and Means committee with a thank you to Representative Richardson from one of the committee members for bringing forth this legislation to give counties the ability to be able to reduce homestead property taxes. So it's moving. It's still got to go to rules. It's got to go to the House floor, and then it'll go over to the Senate. We're going to talk to our senators over there, and we'll continue to work the process. But folks, we're not sitting on our hands hoping this happens. This is not a genie in a bottle. We are working it every single day. We are working with our legislators and our friends in Atlanta, trying to get this done for the folks in Columbia County. Your local government is not evil. Your elected officials are not crooks here. The staff is not looking for ways to ruin our county. It's really the opposite. We're really working hard. And take a look around. We've got it pretty good in Columbia County. If you compare us to other counties, we've got it really good. Matter of fact, we are kind of the county that people look to around the state as really setting the standard on how to do things and how to do things right. So we're pretty fortunate to live in this community. And while we're talking about that, while we're talking about growth, I did want to say, yes, we have confirmed that Trader Joe's, the grocery store chain Trader Joe's, is interested in Columbia County. I know this made a lot of folks happy. Saw some social media stuff last week people showed me. I know the news stations are talking about it. So I hope it comes to fruition. It's not a done deal. We're not there yet. We still have a ways to go, still working with the company, but the company did confirm that they are interested in a store here, and it is a project that we've been working on. I don't think anybody signed any NDAs in this. I know I didn't sign any NDAs for Trader Joe's as we started working on this, but I will tell you that I've personally been working on this and keeping it a secret for over 5 years. So it's been a long process. We've heard you. We heard the community. We heard what you've asked for, and we are here as your government working for you. So hopefully that project comes to fruition. I think it'll be a great addition to Columbia County. Smart growth and progress takes time, but we're committed to do that. So I'm going to pause here for the sake of time, but there's definitely more to come on all of this. I'll make sure that we come back. But as promised, I told you we're going to end every episode with one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard recently. So here we go. This week, most ridiculous thing. As many of you know, we're still working on the Government Center complex here in Evans. And no, your taxes aren't going to go up as a result of this building. And I've heard it called all kinds of names. Fact of the matter is it's a very functional building. It works very well. It's going to be a great addition to our community to allow our citizens to have better access to what's going on here. We're also expanding the Justice Center and some other things. All those were sales tax projects that were voted on by the constituents. So you got to decide how we did these projects and what they were going to cost. We knew all of that in advance. But anyway, we're working on the Government Center. And as a part of that, we recently tore down the old Building A. They're actually working on that project right now. It was built in the 80s. It had served its useful life. So we're actually tearing that down. And this week, I actually heard someone say publicly that the county is building a swimming pool for its employees between Building A and B. Absolutely ridiculous. But it's true. Not as true we're not building a swimming pool. It's true that somebody said it. And then people jump on the bandwagon. I told you they're corrupt. Why do they need a swimming pool? Why would they do that? I'm sure they're trying to say that there's some sort of health initiative that they're trying to plan for their employees. We don't need our county government, our county workers, out there, bureaucrats out there laying around a swimming pool every day. I can't believe Columbia. How dare you do this? You're right. How dare we do this? A pool? Really? Absolutely ridiculous. But somebody said it, and a lot of people believed it, or at least commented as if they believed it, and then we get the scrutiny as a result of it. So no pools. Actually, it's going to be much needed parking, some additional ingress, egress, so you're going to be able to get around our campus better. At the end of the day, we want you to have easier access to your government services. So with that, we're going to go ahead and stop this episode, but just make sure you tune in next time to hear more real stories about what's going on in Columbia County. Until then, I'm glad to call Columbia County home, and I hope those of you that live here are too. Take care.
This has been The County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to stay informed about the issues, initiatives, and people impacting our community. And we sincerely hope today's conversation helps you better understand the work being done in Columbia County. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. As always, visit Columbia County's official website or social media channels for additional information. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.